When he received the $1 million inheritance, the last thing his wife and blind daughter expected was to be left behind with nothing. But that's exactly what happened. Marcus Thompson, a man who had built his entire life around the promise of family devotion, looked his wife Sarah straight in the eyes and said, "I don't need you anymore." Those 7 words would shatter a 20-year marriage and destroy the trust of an innocent 15-year-old girl who had never seen her father's face, but had always believed in his love. The phone call came on a Tuesday morning in September. Sarah was in the kitchen, preparing breakfast for their daughter Emma, when she heard Marcus shouting from the living room. His voice carried a mixture of disbelief and euphoria that she had never heard before. She wiped her hands on her apron and walked toward the sound, her heart racing with curiosity and a strange sense of foreboding. Sarah, get in here right now." Marcus was pacing back and forth, his cell phone clutched in his trembling hand. His face was flushed, and his eyes held a wild gleam that made Sarah take a step back. "What's wrong? What happened?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Marcus turned to face her, and for a moment, she saw the man she had fallen in love with 23 years ago. But then his expression changed, hardening into something she didn't recognize. "My Uncle Harold is dead," he said, but there was no grief in his voice. "And he left me everything. Everything, Sarah. $1.2 million, plus his estate in California." Sarah felt the world tilt beneath her feet. Uncle Harold, Marcus's wealthy relative who had never married and had always been distant from the family, had been a figure more of legend than reality in their household. They had struggled for years, working multiple jobs to make ends meet, especially after Emma's diagnosis. The medical bills, the special equipment, the constant care their daughter needed had drained their savings and maxed out their credit cards. That's incredible," Sarah managed to say, her mind racing. "We can finally pay off Emma's medical debt. We can get her the surgery she needs. Marcus interrupted, his voice sharp and cold. "There is no we anymore, Sarah." The words hit her like a physical blow. She stared at her husband, searching his face for any sign that this was some cruel joke, but found only a stranger looking back at her. From upstairs, they heard Emma's voice calling out, "Mom, Dad, is everything okay?" Emma had been born with a rare genetic condition that had gradually stolen her sight by the age of 8, but her hearing had become extraordinarily acute, and she could sense tension in the house from rooms away. Sarah had always marveled at her daughter's ability to navigate the world with such grace and intelligence, despite the obstacles she faced. "Everything's fine, sweetheart," Sarah called back, her voice cracking slightly. "We'll be up in a minute." But Marcus was already heading toward the stairs, his movements sharp and purposeful. Sarah followed, her legs feeling like they might give out at any moment. Emma was sitting on the edge of her bed, her long auburn hair cascading over her shoulders. She had inherited her mother's delicate features and her father's stubborn chin. Her unseeing eyes turned toward the sound of their footsteps, and Sarah noticed how her daughter's face immediately brightened at what she assumed was both parents approaching. "Dad, you sounded so excited downstairs. What's going on?" Marcus sat down on the bed beside his daughter, and for a moment, Sarah thought she saw a flicker of the loving father he had always been. Emma reached out and found his hand, squeezing it gently. "Emma, I need to tell you something important," Marcus began, his voice taking on an artificial calmness that made Sarah's stomach turn. "I'm going to be going away for a while." "Going away?" Emma's face scrunched up in confusion, like a business trip. "No, sweetheart, I'm moving to California. I've inherited some money from my uncle, and I need to start a new life there." The silence that followed was deafening. Sarah watched as the words slowly sank in for Emma. Her daughter's hand went slack in Marcus's grip, and her face went through a series of emotions: confusion, hurt, and finally, a devastated understanding. A new life. Emma's voice was small, childlike. "What about us? What about our life here?" Marcus stood up abruptly, unable to meet even his blind daughter's unseeing gaze. "You and your mother will be fine. The house is paid off. I'll make sure you have enough to get by." Enough to get by. Sarah finally found her voice, and it came out as a roar. "Marcus, what is happening to you? This is our family. Emma is your daughter. I'm your wife. We've been through everything together." Marcus turned to face her, and the coldness in his eyes made her blood freeze. "Sarah, you have no idea what it's been like for me. 20 years of struggle, of watching every penny, of living in this cramped house and driving that piece of junk car. I've been supporting everyone, carrying the weight of this family on my shoulders, and I'm tired. I'm so damn tired." "You think I haven't been tired?" Sarah's voice rose to match his. You think I haven't sacrificed? I gave up my career to take care of Emma. I've worked night shifts at the diner for 15 years to help pay our bills. I've held this family together while you complained about every hardship we faced. Emma had begun to cry silently, tears streaming down her face as she listened to her parents destroy each other with words. She reached out blindly, trying to find something solid to hold on to, and her hand found the edge of her dresser. Stop, she whispered, but neither parent heard her. You don't understand, Marcus continued, his voice growing more agitated. This money is my chance to finally live, to have the life I was supposed to have. I can travel, I can buy nice things, I can be free from all of this responsibility, all of this responsibility. Sarah stepped closer to him, her own tears now flowing freely. Is that what we are to you? Is that what your daughter is? A responsibility? Stop, Emma's voice cut through their argument like a knife. Both parents turned to look at her, and what they saw broke Sarah's heart all over again. Emma was standing now, her hands pressed against her ears, her face contorted with anguish. Please stop fighting. I can't handle this. Marcus looked at his daughter for a long moment, and Sarah held her breath, hoping to see some sign of the man she had married, the father who used to read to Emma every night, who had learned Braille so he could help her with her homework, who had held her hand during every medical procedure. But when he spoke, his voice was resolved and final. I'm leaving tonight. I've already booked a flight to Los Angeles. The lawyers will be in touch about the divorce proceedings. The word divorce hung in the air like a death sentence. Emma let out a sob that seemed to come from the depths of her soul, and Sarah felt something inside her chest break completely. Daddy, please. Emma reached out toward the sound of his voice. I love you. We love you. Doesn't that mean anything? Marcus paused at the doorway, his back to his family. For a moment, Sarah thought he might turn around, might remember who he used to be. But instead, he said, love doesn't pay the bills, Emma, and it certainly doesn't make up for 20 years of feeling trapped. And then he was gone, leaving behind the sound of Emma's heartbroken sobs and the echo of his footsteps on the stairs. The next few hours passed in a blur of devastating practicality. Marcus packed his belongings with the efficiency of someone who had already mentally left months ago. He made phone calls to banks and lawyers, his voice crisp and businesslike, as he arranged to have his inheritance transferred and his name removed from their joint accounts. Sarah sat with Emma in her daughter's room, holding her as she cried, feeling completely helpless. How do you explain to a 15-year-old girl that the father she worshipped has chosen money over her love? How do you make sense of something that defies all logic and basic human decency? Mom, Emma whispered against Sarah's shoulder. Did I do something wrong? Is it because I'm blind? Is it because I cost too much money? Sarah felt her heart shatter into even smaller pieces. No, baby, no. This has nothing to do with you. This is about your father making a choice that I don't understand. But it's not your fault. You are perfect, exactly as you are. But if I could see, maybe he wouldn't have left. Maybe if I didn't need so much help. Maybe if the medical bills weren't so high. ... double quotes Emma. Listen to me. Sarah pulled back and took her daughter's face in her hands. Your father's decision to leave has nothing to do with your blindness and everything to do with his own selfishness. You are the most wonderful, intelligent, kind person I know. Any father would be lucky to have you as a daughter. But even as she said the words, Sarah wondered if she believed them herself. The doubt crept in like poison, making her question everything she thought she knew about her marriage, her family, her life. That evening, as Marcus loaded his suitcase into a taxi, Emma stood at her bedroom window, her hands pressed against the glass. She couldn't see him leave, but she could hear the car door slam, could hear the engine start, could hear the sound of her father driving out of her life forever. Sarah stood behind her daughter, her own tears falling silently. She had never felt so alone in her life. The days that followed were a nightmare of legal paperwork and financial devastation. True to his word, Marcus had ensured that Sarah and Emma would have enough to get by. He had left them the house, which still had a small mortgage, and a modest savings account with $3,000. Meanwhile, he had disappeared to California with over $1 million and no forwarding address beyond his lawyer's office. Sarah had to take on additional shifts at the diner, sometimes working double shifts just to cover their basic expenses. Emma, who had always been mature for her age, seemed to grow up overnight. She learned to do more around the house, became more independent, and stopped asking when her father might come home. But Sarah could see the change in her daughter. Emma had always been optimistic and outgoing, quick to laugh and eager to try new things despite her blindness. Now she was withdrawn, cautious, as if she was afraid that anyone she loved might disappear without warning. 3 months after Marcus left, Sarah was working the late shift at the diner when her phone rang. It was Emma. and she sounded panicked. "Mom, you need to come home. There's someone here from the bank." Sarah's blood ran cold. She had been afraid of this moment, had been trying to stretch every dollar to avoid it, but apparently, her worst fears were coming true. She rushed home to find a well-dressed woman sitting in their living room with Emma. The woman introduced herself as Janet Morrison from the mortgage company, and her expression was sympathetic but firm. "I'm afraid your husband's name was on the mortgage as the primary borrower," Janet explained. "When he requested to be removed from all financial obligations related to this property, it triggered a review of the loan terms. Without his income to qualify for the mortgage, I'm afraid the bank has no choice but to begin foreclosure proceedings." Sarah felt the room spinning around her. "But the house is paid off." Marcus said the house was paid off. Janet shook her head sadly. "I'm afraid that's not accurate. There's still approximately $60,000 remaining on the mortgage. Your husband has removed his name from the loan, which means you're now solely responsible for the payments. Based on your current income, you don't qualify to maintain the mortgage on your own." Emma was sitting very still beside Sarah, her hands folded in her lap. Sarah could see her daughter processing this information, could see the fear creeping across her face. "How long do we have?" Sarah asked, her voice barely audible. 90 days, Janet replied. "I'm truly sorry. I wish there was something else I could do." After Janet left, Sarah and Emma sat in their living room, in silence. This was the room where Emma had taken her first steps, where she had learned to play the piano by ear, where the family had spent countless evenings watching movies and talking about their dreams for the future. "We're going to lose the house, aren't we?" Emma said quietly. Sarah didn't have the strength to lie anymore. "Yes, sweetheart, we are. Where will we go?" It was the question Sarah had been asking herself for weeks, the question that kept her awake at night and made her feel sick to her stomach. She had looked into apartments they could afford on her salary, but most of them were in dangerous neighborhoods or were too small to accommodate Emma's needs. "I don't know yet," Sarah admitted, "but we'll figure it out. We'll find a way." Emma reached over and found her mother's hand. "Mom, I want you to know something. I'm not sorry that Dad left." Sarah looked at her daughter in surprise. "What do you mean?" "I mean, if he could abandon us so easily, then he was never really the father I thought he was. The father I loved was kind and loyal, and would never hurt his family. So that person never really existed, did he?" The wisdom in her 15-year-old daughter's words brought fresh tears to Sarah's eyes. Emma was right, of course. The Marcus who had left them was the real Marcus, and the loving father and devoted husband had been the illusion. "You're right," Sarah said. "You're absolutely right. And Mom, I'm not angry anymore. I'm sad, but I'm not angry, because I realized something." "What's that?" "I realized that we don't need him. We don't need his money, and we don't need his love if it was so easy for him to take it away. We have each other, and that's stronger than any inheritance." Sarah pulled her daughter into her arms, amazed by Emma's strength and maturity. At 15, Emma had learned lessons about love and loyalty that her 42-year-old father apparently never understood. The next 2 months were a whirlwind of activity as Sarah worked to find them a new place to live. She had to give up most of their furniture and belongings, keeping only what they could fit in a small apartment across town. The neighborhood wasn't great, but it was safe, and the rent was something Sarah could manage on her income. Emma handled the move with remarkable grace, learning the layout of their new home quickly and helping her mother unpack and organize their reduced possessions. She enrolled in a new school and, despite her initial nervousness, quickly made friends and adapted to her new environment. But it was during one of Sarah's late-night shifts at the diner that everything changed. Sarah was serving coffee to a regular customer, an elderly man named Frank who owned a small accounting firm. When he mentioned that he was looking for someone reliable to help with bookkeeping and customer service, "I need someone who's good with numbers and has experience dealing with people," Frank said. "The pay is decent, and the hours are regular, 9 to 5, Monday through Friday." Sarah's heart leaped. She had done bookkeeping years ago, before Emma was born, and she had always been good with numbers. "I might be interested," she said carefully. "What kind of experience are you looking for?" Frank looked at her with interest. "Well, Sarah, I've been watching you work here for years. You're organized, you're honest, and you're good with people. That's exactly what I need. The question is, are you interested in leaving the restaurant business?" It seemed too good to be true, but Sarah decided to take the chance. Within 2 weeks, she had started her new job at Frank's accounting firm. The work was challenging but rewarding, and for the first time in months, Sarah felt like she had some control over her life again. The steady income and regular hours meant that Sarah could spend more time with Emma, and their relationship grew even stronger. They developed new traditions and routines, creating their own version of family that didn't include the shadow of Marcus's abandonment. Emma thrived in her new school and began participating in activities she had never tried before. She joined the debate team and discovered that she had a natural talent for public speaking. She also began learning computer programming, fascinated by the logic and structure of coding languages. 6 months after Marcus left, Sarah received a phone call from his lawyer. Marcus wanted to arrange a meeting with Emma. He's been asking about her, the lawyer explained. He wants to maintain some kind of relationship with his daughter. Sarah felt a familiar rage building in her chest. He abandoned her. He chose money over his own child. Now he wants to waltz back into her life. I understand your anger, Mrs. Thompson, but legally, he does have parental rights. Sarah hung up the phone and sat in her kitchen, trembling with fury. The audacity of Marcus wanting to see Emma now, after he had devastated her, was almost beyond comprehension. When Emma came home from school that afternoon, Sarah told her about the phone call. Emma listened in silence, her face expressionless. What do you want to do? Sarah asked. You don't have to see him if you don't want to. Emma was quiet for a long time, and Sarah could almost see her daughter's mind working, processing this unexpected development. I want to see him, Emma said finally. Are you sure, Emma? You don't owe him anything. He's the one who left. I know, Emma replied, but I want to see him. I want to tell him how I feel. I want him to know who I've become without him. The meeting was arranged for the following Saturday at a neutral location, a coffee shop downtown. Sarah drove Emma there, her stomach churning with anxiety and protective fury. Marcus was already waiting when they arrived. Sarah's first thought was that he looked different, thinner, better dressed, but somehow smaller than she remembered. His expensive suit and designer watch seemed incongruous with the man who had once struggled to pay for Emma's school supplies. Emma walked into the coffee shop with confidence, her white cane tapping lightly as she navigated the space. She had grown taller in the months since Marcus left, and she carried herself with a poise that made Sarah's heart swell with pride. Emma, Marcus stood up from his table, his voice uncertain. Hello, Dad. Emma's voice was steady, polite but distant. Sarah watched as Marcus gestured toward the chair across from him, saw Emma sit down with careful dignity. She took a seat at a nearby table, close enough to intervene if necessary but far enough away to give them some privacy. You look wonderful, Marcus said, and Sarah could hear the surprise in his voice, as if he had expected Emma to have fallen apart without him. Thank you, Emma replied. I'm doing very well. I've been thinking about you, about both of you. I know my leaving was, difficult. Emma tilted her head slightly, and Sarah recognized the gesture as one her daughter made when she was choosing her words carefully. Difficult, Emma repeated. That's an interesting way to describe abandoning your family. Marcus shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Emma, you have to understand. I needed to start over. I needed to find myself. And did you find yourself? I mean, the question seemed to catch Marcus off guard. He was quiet for a moment, and Sarah saw him fidgeting with his expensive watch. I've been able to do things I never thought possible, he said finally. I've traveled, I've seen the world. I bought a house with an ocean view. I've been free to make my own choices. That sounds nice, Emma said, her tone unchanged. And are you happy? Again, Marcus hesitated. I'm living the life I always wanted. That's not what I asked, Emma pressed. I asked if you're happy. Sarah found herself leaning forward, fascinated by her daughter's composure and the way she was cutting straight through Marcus's evasions. I think I am, Marcus said, but his voice lacked conviction. Emma nodded slowly. I'm glad you think you are, because I want to tell you something, Dad. I am happy, really, truly happy. Maybe happier than I've ever been. Marcus looked confused. But how can that be? You lost your house. You had to move. I learned who I really am, Emma interrupted. I learned that I'm stronger than I ever knew. I learned that my mother is the most incredible person in the world, and that I don't need anyone who doesn't want to be in my life. Sarah felt tears stinging her eyes as she watched her remarkable daughter speak with such clarity and strength. Emma, I do want to be in your life, Marcus said, leaning forward. That's why I asked to see you. I want us to have a relationship. Emma was quiet for a long moment, and Sarah held her breath. Dad, do you remember when I was 8 and I had that surgery on my eyes? The one that was supposed to help me see better, but didn't work? Marcus nodded, though Emma couldn't see the gesture. Yes, I remember. Do you remember what you told me afterward? when I was crying because I was still blind. Marcus looked uncomfortable. Not exactly. You told me that sometimes the most valuable things in life are the ones we can't see. You said that love and kindness and loyalty were invisible, but they were more real than anything we could touch. Do you remember that? Yes, Marcus said quietly. Yes, I remember. Well, Dad, I can't see your face, but I can see who you really are. And what I see is someone who threw away love and loyalty for money and freedom. What I see is someone who values things he can touch more than the invisible treasures he already had. Marcus was silent, and Sarah could see that Emma's words had hit their mark. I don't need you in my life, Dad, Emma continued, her voice gentle but firm. I wanted you in my life, but I don't need you. I have everything I need with Mom and the life we've built together. So if you want to be part of my life, you're going to have to earn it. You're going to have to prove that you understand what you threw away, and that you're willing to fight to get it back. Emma, Marcus started, but Emma held up her hand. I'm not finished. I want you to know that I forgive you for leaving. I forgive you because holding on to anger would only hurt me, and I refuse to let your choices damage my life any more than they already have. But forgiveness doesn't mean trust. Trust has to be earned, and you have a very long way to go. Emma stood up from the table, her movement graceful and purposeful. If you decide that you want to try to be my father again, really try, not just show up when it's convenient for you, then you can call Mom, and we'll talk. But if you're looking for easy forgiveness and a quick relationship, you're talking to the wrong person. Marcus stood up as well, reaching out as if to touch Emma's arm, but she had already turned away. Emma, wait, She paused and turned back, toward him. Yes, I'm proud of you. You've become an amazing young woman. Emma smiled, and for the first time during the meeting, her expression softened slightly. Thank you, Dad. But I didn't become amazing because of you. I became amazing in spite of you. Sarah watched her daughter walk toward her with her head held high, and she had never been more proud of anyone in her entire life. As they drove home, Emma was quiet for the first few minutes. Finally, she spoke. Mom, I think Dad looked sad. He did, Sarah agreed. How do you feel about that? I feel sorry for him, Emma said. I think he thought money would make him happy, and now he's realizing it doesn't. But I also think he made his choice, and now he has to live with it. You handled that beautifully, Emma. I'm so proud of you. I learned from watching you. Mom, you showed me how to be strong when everything falls apart. You showed me that we don't need anyone else to make us whole. Sarah reached over and squeezed her daughter's hand. We make a pretty good team, don't we? The best, Emma agreed. Over the following months, Marcus called several times, but the conversations were awkward and stilted. He seemed to want the benefits of being a father without doing any of the work required to rebuild the relationship he had destroyed. Eventually, the calls became less frequent and then stopped altogether. Emma continued to thrive. She was accepted into an advanced placement program at school and began talking about her dreams of studying computer science in college. Sarah's job at the accounting firm led to a promotion and a raise, giving them more financial security than they had ever had, even when Marcus was living with them. One evening, nearly a year after Marcus had left, Sarah was helping Emma with her homework when her daughter suddenly looked up from her Braille textbook. Mom, I want to tell you something. What's that, sweetheart? I'm glad Dad left. Sarah was surprised by this statement. Really? Why? Emma set down her stylus and turned toward her mother. Because, if he hadn't left, I never would have discovered how strong I am. I never would have learned that I can handle anything life throws at me. I never would have realized that the most important relationship in my life is the one I have with you. Sarah felt tears welling up in her eyes. Emma, and Mom, I never would have learned that real wealth isn't money in a bank account. Real wealth is having someone who loves you unconditionally, who believes in you, who stands by you no matter what. Dad may have gotten the inheritance, but we got something much more valuable. What's that? Emma smiled, and her face lit up with a joy that made her beautiful beyond description. We got each other, and we got the knowledge that we can survive anything as long as we're together. Sarah pulled her daughter into her arms, holding her tight as tears of gratitude and love streamed down her face. Emma was right. They had lost a house, a marriage, and a father, but they had gained something infinitely more precious. They had discovered the unbreakable strength of their love for each other. 2 years later, Sarah received a final phone call from Marcus's lawyer. Marcus had suffered a heart attack and died suddenly in his expensive California home. He had been alone, with no friends or family around him. The $1 million inheritance had been spent on luxury items and failed investments, and he died nearly broke. In his will, he had left what little remained of his estate to Emma, along with a letter. Sarah read the letter first, wanting to protect her daughter from any final cruelty. But what she found was a man's desperate attempt to explain the unexplainable. The letter was full of regret and suffering. Marcus wrote that he had spent every day since leaving them, realizing what a terrible mistake he had made. He had tried to buy happiness, but found only emptiness. He had sought freedom, but found only loneliness. He had gained wealth, but lost everything that truly mattered. He wrote that he had been too ashamed and too proud to try to make things right, and now it was too late. He begged Emma's forgiveness and told her that she had been right about everything she had said to him in the coffee shop that day. When Sarah finished reading the letter to Emma, her daughter was quiet for a long time. "Are you okay?" Sarah asked. Emma nodded slowly. "I'm sad for him, Mom. I'm sad that he spent his last years alone and unhappy, but I'm also grateful. Grateful that his leaving taught us what really matters. Grateful that we learned we didn't need him to be happy. Grateful that we discovered how strong we are together." Emma paused, and when she spoke again, her voice was filled with wisdom beyond her 17 years. "Dad thought he was choosing wealth over love, but what he really did was choose loneliness over family. He chose fear over courage. He chose to run away instead of fighting for what mattered, and in the end, he lost everything, including himself." Sarah looked at her beautiful, brilliant daughter and marveled at the woman she had become. Marcus had abandoned them, thinking they would fall apart without him, but instead, they had discovered that they were stronger together than they had ever been with him. The small inheritance Marcus left behind was enough to pay for Emma's first year of college. She was accepted to a prestigious university with a full scholarship, having maintained perfect grades throughout high school despite everything they had been through. On the day Sarah drove Emma to college, they sat in the car outside the dormitory, neither one wanting to say goodbye. "Mom, I want you to know something," Emma said, her hand finding Sarah's across the console. "What's that?" "When Dad left us, I thought my life was ending. I thought we would never be happy again. But you showed me that when one door closes, another one opens. You showed me that we have the power to create our own happiness, our own success, our own definition of wealth." Sarah squeezed her daughter's hand, her heart full of love and pride. "You did that yourself, Emma. I just stood by and watched you become the amazing person you always were inside." Emma smiled, and Sarah saw in her daughter's face a confidence and peace that no amount of money could ever buy. "We're going to be okay, aren't we, Mom?" "We're going to be more than okay," Sarah replied. "We're going to be extraordinary." As Sarah watched Emma walk into her dormitory, surrounded by new friends and ready to begin the next chapter of her life, she reflected on the journey that had brought them here. Marcus's abandonment had been devastating, but it had also been transformative. It had stripped away everything they thought they needed and revealed everything they actually had. They had learned that love is not something that can be bought or sold, given or taken away by someone else's whim. Real love, the kind that sustains and strengthens, comes from within and grows stronger when it's tested. They had discovered that family is not defined by blood or marriage certificates, but by the people who stand by you when everything falls apart, who believe in you when you can't believe in yourself, who choose to love you every single day. Most importantly, they had learned that true wealth cannot be measured in dollars or possessions. True wealth is found in the depth of your relationships, the strength of your character, and the knowledge that you can overcome anything life throws at you. Marcus had received $1 million inheritance and thought it would set him free. Instead, it had imprisoned him in loneliness and regret. Sarah and Emma had lost almost everything they owned, but in the process, they had gained something infinitely more valuable. They had discovered the unshakable power of unconditional love and unbreakable family bonds. In the end, the question isn't who got the money. The question is, who got the treasure? And there was no doubt about the answer to that question. What would you do if you were abandoned by a loved one in the name of money and greed? Would you let bitterness consume you, or would you find the strength to build something even more beautiful from the ashes of betrayal? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And remember, true wealth isn't what you have in your bank account. It's what you have in your heart and who you have standing beside you when the storms of life come calling.